and welcome to episode 17 of Let's Hear It. Today's guest is Mark Levy. He's a great drummer based in Denver, Colorado, and he's in one of my favorite instrumental bands, Circles Around the Sun, a great touring band. A few weeks back, we had his rhythm section partner, Dan Horn, with his quarantine braids and facial hair, which of course was a viral sensation, so we're hoping Mark can do the same. Mark has a snare drum he's going to show us today that was made by a Colorado-based company called the Joyful Noise Drum Company. Say hello to Mark Levy. Hello, Mark.
Hey, Gary. How's it going?
It's going good. Great to see you. I miss you very much.
Likewise.
We should be on tour right now. We should be in a bus. Disclaimer, I am the manager of Circles Around the Sun. And I often go on tour with them, and we really do miss touring. And we had lots of great stuff planned for this year, but hopefully that will all occur next year.
Yeah.
I know that you've been lucky enough to actually play some gigs, not with Circles Around the Sun, but with some of your friends there in Colorado. So tell us what you've been up to.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate to have quite a few gigs, especially last month in the month of August. With all the restrictions, outdoor gigs have been the way to go for everybody here. So, very grateful to have had a lot of opportunities to play gigs outdoors, up in the mountains, around here in Denver, and kind of everywhere in between. And it's been really very uplifting for those of us playing, and it seems to be that way for those of us getting to go and see the music too. And I can speak as an audience member that is definitely the case. And, just making the best of it right now.
Yeah, I've been really jealous when I've seen the posts that you've made where you're playing gigs, and I'm like, oh, live music performed by musicians and fans watching it. It's so exciting. I wish I could see one of those.
Like the good old days.
Yes, well, hopefully the good old days will be back soon enough. Well,
Yeah.
tell us about the snare drum you've got there. Of course, I've heard it.
You have definitely heard this snare drum. If you've ever heard a studio or a live recording of Circles Around the Sun, it's this drum. I got this drum in 2014, and on the inside here, I'm not sure if you can see this, but there is a inscription handwritten by the drum's maker, Kurt Waltrip, and it says passion, power, purpose, and then the date 9/1/14. The first date I actually played with this drum was 9/2/14 for an event called Film on the Rocks, which happens at Red Rocks. So it's been near and dear to me ever since then. I played it on every gig I played with the Chris Robinson Brotherhood, 34 dates on tour with them, every date I ever played with Phil Lesh and Friends, and pretty much every single recording session I've done since 2014. So it's really special to me, and it's a beautiful instrument, just in and of itself to look at. This is their snare drum throw off here. It's their feather symbol, and it's got a really nice little action with a click. It's super elegant and simple and works really well. And of course, this is how you control the tension of the snares. So every snare drum will have that, but every throw off is different based on the manufacturer. So Kurt put a lot of thought into all the components on this drum. All of the hardware is nickel-plated brass, so really nice resonant qualities, and also just looks great under pretty much any light. What really sets this drum apart is the fact that it is a single piece of wood. So it's a bird's eye rock maple that was reclaimed submerged timber from Lake Michigan, and they think it was down there submerged for like 150 to 300 years. So that kind of timber is used in a lot of instruments because it has a super dense quality, but it's also very light compared to a wood that, you know, a drum like this would normally be much heavier, but it's actually not that heavy, just based on the qualities that I just described. And you can see a little bit of the pattern maybe there on the video of this drum. Just really beautiful grains and color. And if you get closer with the right light, you can see the bird's eye pieces in there. This is the Joyful Noise Drum Company's badge here. And yeah, that's pretty much the rundown of this drum. It also has on the top and bottom reinforcement rings that you see there, kind of making it a little thicker on the top and bottom. And those are also solid pieces of maple that were steam bent. And you can see a little bit inside the drum, there's one single seam where he connected the piece of wood. And on the outside of the drum, you can't see the seam at all because he hit it right under the throw off, which is pretty amazing. The craftsmanship on this drum is just incredible. I love it every time I pull it out. And, you know, things like the snare bed here, he has it just barely lower where the snare sits in order to give the drum a much more gentle touch and really very responsive drum. So yeah, that's it. Definitely the most musical snare drum in my collection, and super versatile. Can tune it a huge range from low to very high. It is incredibly sensitive at very low volumes, and it also speaks really well at very high volumes. And yeah, I love this drum.
Nice. I think that is their legacy maple model. So if you look at their website, that's the one that you have. And I've got a couple of questions. So I know that you went to the New England Conservatory of Music. Is that correct?
That's correct. New England Conservatory, NEC, as we like to call it.
When you're at a school like that, do you do much learning about the actual instruments? Obviously, you're learning how to play, but how do you determine what snare drum do you like? And did you learn anything back in school about that, or is it just a process of playing for years where you learn this is the type of snare I love? But do they tell you anything? Is that part of the curriculum?
It's not really a part of the curriculum. I would say that trial and error is the way that I really learned a lot about what I like and what I don't like. Of course, also with any drum, what head you choose to put on the top, especially the top, but also for snare drums specifically, the bottom head is pretty important. So, you know, for example, right now I'm using a reverse black dot head, which Remo calls controlled sound, and it's coated. And that's just basically, you know, a variation on their kind of flagship head, which is the Weather King, which is like a one-ply snare drum head. And, you know, that in conjunction with what drum you have, and then the size of the drum, this is a 6.5 inch deep by 14 inch diameter drum, which is really the kind of bread and butter snare drum size. But then, you know, they can get a lot more shallow, they can get a lot deeper, they can get bigger, and not really that much bigger than this. Sometimes you'll see a 15, but they do get a lot smaller. And then, you know, obviously the material that the drum is made out of is super important. So a lot of times drums will be made in plies. Tony Leone was talking about this with his drum that he showed us. And, you know, this drum, like his drum, are single pieces of wood. So it's not a ply, it's a solid shell that's then steam bent. So Kurt at Joyful Noise was an apprentice of the late, great drum maker Johnny Craviotto, whose drums are world famous and very renowned. So Kurt learned the ways from Johnny and started his own drum company. So just like the Craviotto drums, there are also metal drums that are seamless drums. So it's one solid piece of metal, and that's like the Ludwig Black Beauty is that way, and there's a lot of drums that are made in that style. But you know, in metals you get like a whole new world of options, if it's copper or brass or aluminum or all sorts of different alloys that they'll use. And personally, I just have always really loved the sound of maple drums because they have a really nice clear tone quality, but they also have a warmth and a depth to them. Whereas, you know, like a birch drum, for example, is louder, has more presence. So a birch drum would be, or a drum kit even, would be used a lot in like rock music, whereas in jazz and funk, guys tend to go towards maple drums. But again, this is very personal, so I'm making generalizations that I'm sure there's many, many examples that lay outside of that, you know. So to get back to your question, it really is just a matter of taste and trial and error. So for years, I dreamed about having a solid shell, wooden solid shell drum, and I saved up for many years to buy this drum. Yeah, I haven't looked back a day since, really.
Great. Well, you just answered all the other questions I was going to ask you about heads and so forth. So why don't you give us a couple examples? Let's hear what it sounds like.
Yeah, cool. So I'll just play like a little bit of a rudimental improvisation, just so you can get kind of a feel for what the drum sounds like. You know, a little bit of the dynamic range. Like I was saying, it's just so sensitive. When I get down here, you can still really hear the snare response, which for a drum that's this deep is sometimes not really that easy to attain. Like, I'm not going to really nail it because I don't want to clip the mic or anything, but it will go there. And I always feel like this drum is supporting me, whether I'm trying to play at the very bottom of my dynamic range or if I'm just really letting loose and wailing on it. Also with brushes, you know, the same thing goes. I mean, it just sounds great being so sensitive. So if I can get this one open. You know, just really a nice touch to the drum. I'm not the world's greatest brush player, but you know, the drum will let me do it, so it's not holding me back.
It's a beautiful sound. As a non-drummer, I have a question for you. Does the stand that you put the snare drum on, does that matter a lot to you? Do you notice differences if you don't have the stand that you love?
Not really, but there are things that any stand could do to kind of take away from the sound of a drum. For example, if I were to tighten the basket up and it was clamping the bottom head, that would definitely affect the sound of the drum. So I always just, you know, make sure that my drum is secure in the basket, but it's not getting choked out. But really, snare drum stands are, as long as they're not collapsing on you, they're doing the job.
That's what I figured. It's a question that I've always wondered as somebody who doesn't play drums, but I've occasionally set drum sets up, and I'm always curious about those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different types of snare drum stands that have different adjustments. Like some will be very complex, like DW makes a stand that will move forward and back and swivel any way you want it. Whereas a stand like this is just very basic, will just move up and down and then has one pivot point on the basket part of it. So, you know, I've always kind of thought like the drum world, not just drums themselves, but drums, hardware, accessories, in the drum world, it kind of seems like the burger world or something, because everybody's trying to make like the next crazy, triple stack or whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of really creative, cool things in the drum world. So it's cool to see people's creativity coming out like that, for sure, even though it sometimes makes it just more complicated.
Well, I know you're working on some recording projects as well. Obviously, you guys have been working on some Circles Around the Sun things that we'll be talking about soon. And anything else you've been working on?
I am rebuilding my studio here in my basement. So that is definitely a project that is underway. And right now, going into the fall, really just working on staying generally healthy and, mentally, physically, spiritually, and just getting ready for whatever comes next, because, it seems like nobody's really sure where we're going. So wherever we go, I just want to be ready for it.
What is the saying? If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So.
Right on. Yeah. Amen.
All right. Well, I hope that speaking of a road, hopefully we'll be back on the road soon.
I miss hearing your banjo playing coming out of the back of the bus in the green rooms.
I will be bringing banjos when we do go. So thanks for joining us today. And I really do hope I get to see you soon, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Gary. See ya.
All right, there you go. Mark Levy and his beautiful, joyful noise snare drum. It was great to see Mark. He's one of my real pals, and great to hear that drum. Check back in a couple days for the next episode of Let's Hear It. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our Facebook page, and more soon. Thanks.